Her haughty offspring relegated her to the status of a domestic servant and callously expelled her from her own opulent estate the very instant her substantial financial standing appeared to diminish. Yet, entirely unbeknownst to them, their mother's seemingly devastating actions were in fact the culmination of an elaborate and carefully orchestrated trial, and her subsequent response to their cruelty would utterly astound them, reshaping their lives in ways they could never have anticipated. If you're discovering our channel for the first time, we warmly invite you to subscribe, encourage you to like this video to show your support, and please share your current viewing location in the comments below. We love hearing from our global audience. Madame Nala Nalesai, a formidable figure widely and affectionately known throughout the region as Mama Gold and Plenty, sat perfectly still at her ornate mahogany desk. It was positioned within the hushed, tranquil confines of her private study, a sanctuary where she often retreated. Her gaze was fixed intently on the wall directly opposite her, as if she were meticulously deciphering some invisible, intricate script written there only for her eyes. Her vibrant, custom-made wrapper, woven with threads that caught the light, subtly gleamed, hinting at the quality of its material, while her blouse was impeccably tucked, demonstrating a habitual neatness even in stillness. She appeared poised, ready for some significant and demanding engagement, yet her meticulously planned schedule for the day was conspicuously, unnervingly bare. She had no imminent appointments, no urgent meetings to attend, and had remained utterly motionless for nearly an hour, one hand supporting the weight of her chin in thoughtful contemplation, the other resting idly by her side, fingers curled gently. She neither blinked nor took a deep, restorative breath. She was utterly still, an island of calm in a sea of inner turmoil, a quiet but fierce inferno smoldering relentlessly within her breast. At 69 years young, she didn't just own businesses, she commanded a veritable empire. 3 expansive warehouses overflowing with goods, 6 thriving retail outlets buzzing with activity, and a palatial residence so grand and awe-inspiring that it routinely compelled passing motorists and pedestrians alike to pause, gaze in admiration, and often capture its grandeur with their phones. Her name, Madame Nala Nalesai, was utterly synonymous with influence and prosperity within the bustling Kofarigua Bazaar, her strong, confident countenance frequently gracing local television screens during news segments or interviews. Her immense, hard-earned fortune didn't just sustain her immediate family, it provided livelihoods and support for countless others, employees, dependents, charitable causes. Nevertheless, despite her vast riches that stretched far beyond the horizon, the deep reverence she commanded from vendors and colleagues alike, her extensive property holdings that dotted the city, and the almost instinctively deferential greetings of her numerous, well-paid staff, absolutely nothing could quench the mounting, suffocating mortification that was slowly but surely consuming her heart. For, despite all her monumental accomplishments, the sacrifices she had made, and the towering legacy she had built, the very children for whom she had toiled proved, in her eyes, utterly feckless and dishearteningly entitled. She slowly, deliberately closed her eyes, and a searing, familiar agony began its painful ascent, starting deep in her stomach and climbing relentlessly towards her throat, threatening to choke off her breath. Memories, sharp and unbidden, flooded her consciousness, a painful, overwhelming tide. Her beloved husband had passed away when their children were mere toddlers, still needing constant care and attention. Heartbreakingly, barely 2 weeks after his burial ceremony, his family, without warning, without mercy, and with shocking cruelty, had cast her out of their compound. She departed that day with nothing but a single, worn woven utility bag clutched in her hand, carrying her son and daughter, one a small, sleepy weight strapped securely to her back, the other a fragile form cradled protectively in her arms, utterly disgraced and alone. She vividly recalled sleeping on the cold, unforgiving floor in a makeshift servant's quarter, the rough texture scratching against her skin, frying plantains over a sputtering charcoal stove, a heavy baby still strapped to her back, the oil spitting and searing as she silently wept within the confines of crowded, sweltering TRODRO vans. balancing impossibly heavy bales of fabric on her head beneath the scorching West African sun until her neck ached and her vision blurred, and subsisting on meager portions of gari soaked in cold water so that her precious children could have rice, a more nutritious meal. She remembered entering her bank overdraft account every other month, the shame burning hot, just to cover school fees for the finest schools she insisted they attend, skipping her own birthday celebrations year after year, borrowing small amounts of money from acquaintances and colleagues, the humiliation always present, and lying awake at night, wide-eyed and praying desperately that the landlord wouldn't humiliate her by banging on the door for rent before her children woke up. She recounted fasting for a grueling 21 days straight, drinking only water, simply to amass enough funds to cover the external examination fees for their final year of school, a sacrifice of body and spirit. She had forged her empire from the ground up, starting from a modest, temporary stall in the dusty Kofarigua Bazaar, gradually expanding to importing entire containers of goods directly from China. She became the woman everyone admired, the one held up as an example, the woman who carved out a name for herself and built immense wealth entirely without the support or influence of a man, the one who came to dominate the Abeokuta textile import empire through sheer grit and determination. She had constructed her palatial mansion with her own hands, metaphorically speaking, meticulously paying cash for every single brick, every perfectly laid tile, every imposing gate. And now, she sat, a prisoner of her own success, in that very house, surrounded by two grown adults, her children, who wouldn't even lift a finger, wouldn't make the slightest effort to assist her with sweeping a floor or washing a dish. Her son, Kwame, the firstborn, had once been the absolute pride and joy of her life, the son for whom she had such high hopes. She had enrolled him in the finest, most expensive schools, paid tuition fees in dollars without complaint, and even flown him abroad for summer breaks, wanting him to experience the world. The day he graduated from university was a landmark event. She had prepared 5 large coolers overflowing with delicious rice and danced with a joy so profound it was as if she had just secured a highly coveted visa to a promised land. He returned home, confident and brimming with ideas, and proudly declared that he didn't wish to work for anyone else. "I want to be a businessman just like you, Mummy," he asserted, his voice full of misplaced confidence, but the understanding in his heart utterly foolish and naive. He expressed a desire to launch a tire importation venture, requesting a significant sum of 3.5 million naira to start. Generously, and perhaps foolishly given his inexperience, she bestowed upon him an even larger sum, 5 million naira. A mere 3 months later, the entire business had vanished without a trace. No stock, no accounts, no reports, no updates, absolutely nothing to show for the investment. Before she could even formulate the questions burning on her tongue, he returned with another equally preposterous proposition. "Mummy, crypto is booming right now. Just give me 5 million naira, and I guarantee it'll transform into 30 million naira by December." Against her better judgment, driven by a mother's hope, she entrusted him with the funds again. This time, the money evaporated even quicker than the phantom tire business had. After the crypto debacle came other fleeting, ill-conceived ventures. Perfumes, then expensive gym equipment he barely used, then a laundry pickup application that never launched, each idea more preposterous and less thought out than the last. Each and every time, she gave him millions, pouring her hard-earned capital into his schemes, and each and every time, he failed spectacularly. Still, he would adorn himself in the latest designer attire, purchased with her funds, and look her in the eye, confidently declaring, "It's not failure, Mummy, it's just valuable experience." Experience that was quite literally devouring her money as if it were mere peanuts or insignificant snacks. Her daughter, Alma, the younger child, was tragically no better. She returned from university, where her tuition and living expenses had been fully covered, announcing with great enthusiasm that she had discovered her true passion in life, lifestyle influencing on social media. "Mummy, I just need a decent ring light, a good camera, and a backdrop. I want to create beautiful beauty and fashion content online." Nala Nalesai, belonging to a different generation, didn't fully comprehend the complexities or potential of this modern profession, but, wanting to support her daughter's apparent aspirations, provided her with everything she requested, sparing no expense. She even transformed a spare guest room into a dedicated studio space for her and enlisted her household staff to help set up the equipment and decor. 6 short months later, Alma abruptly abandoned the expensive ring light and camera, declaring the work too arduous and demanding. "Nobody is liking my posts enough," she grumbled petulantly, as if the lack of instant online validation was a valid reason to quit. The very next week, with characteristic inconsistency, she expressed a sudden, burning desire to commence selling bags and shoes online. Nala Nalesai, hoping this venture might prove more enduring, provided her with another substantial sum, 1.5 million naira for initial inventory. 1 month into the venture, every single bag she was supposed to sell had been personally styled, modeled, and worn by her, sometimes even taken out for evenings with friends. When her mother, noticing the rapidly disappearing stock and lack of sales, gently inquired about the vanishing inventory, she replied with a dismissive wave of her hand, "I had to model them for the pictures, didn't I?" Nala Nalesai, at that moment, felt a surge of frustration so intense she almost used one of the expensive bags to model her daughter's head against the nearest wall. Then came the ultimate affront, the event that truly shattered the remaining facade of normalcy. Kwame impregnated a young woman named Nuru. When Nala Nalesai, disappointed but prepared to handle the situation maturely, confronted him about the impending fatherhood, he callously asserted that he wasn't ready for marriage, that he was still figuring out his life, as if getting a young woman pregnant wasn't a significant part of that life. "You're not ready?" she questioned, her voice unnervingly calm but cutting with contained fury. "Yet your sperm was ready. You planted cassava. Now the harvest is here, and you're attempting to hide from the reaping." She compelled him to face the girl's family and, taking charge as always, arranged a modest but proper introduction ceremony to acknowledge his responsibility. 1 month after the ceremony, the young woman, Nuru, moved into the opulent mansion, and that, Nala Nalesai soon discovered, was when her true ordeal began. Nuru would habitually leave dirty plates scattered in the sink for staff, who were soon to be gone, or anyone else to find, watch television from dawn till dusk, neglecting any semblance of domestic contribution, and began parading around the house in revealing bum shorts and crop tops, raising her voice and issuing directives as if she were the undisputed matriarch of the household, not a new arrival. One day, she remarked with startling audacity, "Mummy, can we perhaps replace this couch? It's frankly giving old-school vibes and doesn't fit the aesthetic." Nala Nalesai nearly collapsed from the sheer audacity of the comment in her own home. As if that weren't enough, her daughter, Alma, returned home unexpectedly one Saturday afternoon, her own baby, Nala's grandchild, tucked unceremoniously into a traveling bag alongside clothes. "Mummy, I've left my husband," she declared confidently, without a trace of regret or concern for the implications. "He was treating me exactly like a maid. He actually made me cook and sweep, me, a baby girl like me." Nala Nalesai looked first at her daughter, then at the innocent child, the next generation she was also expected to care for, and said absolutely nothing, her silence speaking volumes. So now, the once tranquil mansion was bursting at the seams, overcrowded and chaotic. 2 fully grown, dependent children, 1 boisterous and demanding daughter-in-law, 3 active grandchildren, and only 1 single person purchasing provisions, settling all the mounting utility bills, managing the dwindling household affairs, and generally keeping everything running. The same tireless woman who had built it all from scratch, brick by painstaking brick. Every single night, she would overhear their careless laughter, the sounds of their movie marathons echoing through the halls, their endless scrolling on social media feeds filling the quiet spaces, while her own hard-won bank account dwindled daily, drained by their demands and lack of contribution. One evening, sitting alone at her desk, propped hand under her chin as was her habit, she whispered aloud, the words a mix of pain and resolve, "I built this entire life, this security, this legacy, with my very essence, pouring my soul into it, and now I'm being drained dry by the very people I bled for, the children I sacrificed everything for. She reached into the top drawer of her desk, her fingers closing around an old, familiar business card. Advocate Juma, a reputable estate and property consultant. She picked up her phone, her resolve hardening with each passing second, and dialed the number. "Hello, Advocate," she began, her voice low but firm. "It's Nala Nalesai. I want to do something significant. I want to put my children to a test." She paused for a moment, the weight of her decision settling upon her. "And if they fail," she added, her voice taking on a steely edge, "if they fail this test, I will deal with them. I will discipline them, in a way that life, in its infinite wisdom, somehow never did." It commenced one evening, the plan unfolding quietly and calculatedly, like the opening scene of a dramatic theatrical performance. Madame Nala Nalesai returned home precisely as she had planned, and deliberately slammed the heavy front door harder than usual, the sound echoing dramatically through the quiet house. Her vibrant wrapper was artfully disheveled, her headscarf perched precariously on her head as if she had been wrestling with a strong, unseen wind on her way home. Her expensive handbag didn't just land gently on the floor, it dropped with a heavy thud, as if it, too, had surrendered to the weight of her apparent misfortune. Before anyone in the household could even formulate a question, before they could inquire about her day, she burst into loud, theatrical tears. I am finished. I am utterly ruined. Everything I worked for, everything I built, it's all gone." The quiet house instantly stirred to life. Kwame, her son, reacted first, running downstairs from his room, shirtless and disoriented. Alma rushed from her own room, one of her carefully applied false eyelashes already askew from haste. Nuru, the daughter-in-law, paused the cooking video she was absorbed in on her phone, and entered the parlor, her fingers still slick with cooking oil. "Mummy, what happened? Mummy, please speak to us. Mummy, please don't frighten us like this. Tell us what happened." Nala Nalesai sank onto the large central couch, a picture of despair, threw her head back dramatically, and wailed even louder, ensuring everyone could hear her distress. "They have destroyed me. My sweat, my blood, everything I built with my own 2 hands over decades, it's all gone in an instant." Alma knelt beside her mother, feigning concern. "Mummy, who did this to you? Who would dare?" Nala Nalesai sniffed loudly and slowly turned her head, looking directly at each of them, one by one, allowing the tension to build. "There was a fire," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "A huge one." They all gasped on cue, their eyes widening. She dramatically wiped her nose with the edge of her disheveled wrapper, adding another layer to the performance. It started in the Kofarigua Bazaar itself. Nobody knows what caused it, the cause is still under investigation, but once it began, hoodlums, opportunistic criminals, infiltrated the market from everywhere. They ransacked shops, they looted everything not destroyed by the flames. My largest warehouse, everything inside it gone. Even the container I just ordered from China last week, filled with new stock. My entire working capital, my entire savings, was invested in it. She raised her voice again, injecting genuine-sounding anguish into her tone. "They've ruined me completely." The living room fell into stunned silence, the air thick with disbelief. Even the domestic staff, usually bustling about, who were hiding and eavesdropping in the hallway, paused their activities. "Mummy, so, what are we going to do now?" Kwame finally managed to ask, his voice shaky with dawning fear, the implication of their changed circumstances hanging heavy in the air. She looked at him slowly, allowing her gaze to linger, her expression unreadable. "What do you mean? What are we going to do? Are you not a man? Are you not my first son, the one meant to take over?" He blinked, unsure how to respond. "I only have this house left," she continued, her voice dropping slightly, "and my car. Everything else is ashes, gone forever. The account is empty." Silence descended again, heavier this time, until Alma, ever self-absorbed, broke it with a startlingly inappropriate comment. "Mummy, but my birthday is next week." Nala Nalesai slowly turned her head towards her daughter, her eyes narrowing like a lioness spotting prey. "You said?" Amma instantly lowered her voice, shrinking back slightly. "Nothing, Mummy. Absolutely nothing." Then Kwame, seemingly oblivious to the gravity of the situation, cleared his throat. "Mummy, about my son's birthday party next month, we already printed banners." Nala Nalesai stood up abruptly, cutting him off, the performance reaching its peak. "You're both standing here talking about birthdays, insignificant parties, when I'm telling you I've lost my life's work, the very foundation of our lives. This reaction is how I truly know I failed as a mother." With those damning words hanging in the air, she left them standing there, still in shock, and dragged her heavy handbag up the stairs without looking back, leaving them to contemplate the seismic shift she had just announced. The next morning, Madame Nala Nalesai did not descend from her room for breakfast, as was her custom. Nobody heard her move, heard any sounds of her activity. By afternoon, the family driver, a fixture for years, quietly announced that he had been relieved of his duty. By evening, all the domestic staff, the cooks, the cleaners, the gatekeepers, had packed their bags and departed, their salaries suddenly unaffordable. Madame Nala Nalesai had simply stated, with quiet finality, that she could no longer afford their salaries, that the money was gone. And just like that, a house that once operated with the smooth, efficient hum of a mini hotel, always buzzing with activity and comfort, transformed into a silent, unnerving tomb. Everyone in the house, and perhaps those who knew the family, assumed that the children would quickly adjust to the new reality, would step up and take responsibility. They didn't. Instead, they waited, passively expecting the situation to somehow resolve itself, expecting their mother to magically fix everything as she always had. The second day dawned, and she remained in bed, staring fixedly at the ceiling as if something invisible were crawling across it, her mind distant, her chest heavy with unspoken emotions, her voice seemingly absent. Amma, tentative and unsure, tiptoed into her room. "Mummy, you're not going to the market today to buy supplies?" Nala Nalesai didn't turn her head, her gaze still fixed upwards. "There is no market to go back to," she said quietly, her voice raspy. "It's gone. Everything is gone." That was the pivotal moment, the moment it truly, painfully sank in for the children. The buffet of their comfortable, effortless life was irrevocably closed. And that's precisely when the real, uncomfortable drama began to unfold. By the end of the first week following the announcement, the once vibrant house felt distinctively, chillingly different. Food became scarce, the once constant television fell silent, the careless laughter dried up, replaced by sighs and grumbles, and one by one, everyone in the house began seeking ways, however selfish, to protect themselves from the sudden hardship. Amma, who had previously adorned herself with elaborate wigs, stopped wearing them, her focus shifting. She started carrying her child around constantly, almost like an emotional support handbag, a visible sign of her vulnerability. She would sigh loudly and dramatically while scrolling through her social media feeds, hoping against hope for a giveaway post from one of her soft life friends, a chance for a handout. Kwame, the son, mostly stayed hidden in the backyard, escaping the tension indoors. When he did enter the house, it was either solely to charge his phone or to complain loudly about the heat or the lack of electricity to power the air conditioning. Nala Nalesai, despite everything, despite her declared ruin, still awoke early each morning. She swept the compound, carefully washed the growing pile of dishes left in the sink, and meticulously mopped the living room floor. One morning, as she swept diligently under the large couch, Kwame, utterly absorbed in his gaming console, simply lifted his legs a few inches without even looking up, expecting her to clean under them as if this were a normal occurrence, as if she were a paid servant. Nuru, the daughter-in-law, sat comfortably on the armrest of the same couch, sipping tea and scrolling on her phone, completely ignoring the sweeping, while the grandchildren, oblivious to the tension, ran past with muddy feet, shouting and playing. Alma emerged from her room, stood before the full-length mirror beside the dining area, preparing to film something for social media, and casually remarked, "Mummy, shift a little. Let me use the mirror properly." Nala Nalesai, broom still in hand, slowly moved aside without a word. That entire day, she uttered not a single sound to her children or Nuru. She simply continued her domestic tasks, sweeping and cleaning, tears silently welling in her throat, burning but not falling. Nuru, the daughter-in-law, was the first to fully and unequivocally reveal the depth of her true colors. She went to the local market one morning, purchased ingredients for stew and rice, and cooked one bubbling, fragrant pot of jollof rice. The delicious aroma permeated every corner of the house, filling the empty spaces and raising hopes. Everyone, including Nala Nalesai, momentarily believed she was finally stepping up, finally contributing to the household. That hope was brutally dashed when she served generous portions only to her husband, Kwame, her own children, and herself, sitting together at the dining table while Nala Nalesai watched. Not one single spoon, not a single grain of rice, was left or offered for the woman who had built the very kitchen they were eating in. She then calmly washed the pot and cleaned their plates, returning to her room afterwards as if she had successfully completed some crucial diplomatic assignment, her task for the day finished. Nala Nalesai sat alone at the dining table that night, long after they had finished eating, quietly drinking simple pap, a thin porridge, and nibbling on dry, hard peanuts, her eyes watery not just from the slight pepper in the peanuts, but from the sting of profound hurt and disappointment. The next day, her own daughter, Alma, did something even worse, even more cutting. She returned from a nearby eatery with one large takeout pack of food. Instead of sharing or offering any, she entered her room, closed the door firmly, and shared the food exclusively with her son. When Nala Nalesai, hungry and hurt, softly knocked on the door and inquired if she might have just a small portion, Alma replied dismissively from inside, "Mummy, it was just a small portion. I didn't even eat well myself. It wasn't enough." That night, alone in her room, Nala Nalesai took her blood pressure medication with a glass of water and a single banana. No protein, no proper meal, no fruit other than the banana, just the bitter taste of silence and neglect. The grandchildren, influenced by their parents' behavior, no longer greeted her properly, their youthful affections seemingly withdrawn. The staff were gone, their cheerful presence missed. The once full fridge was starkly empty. The silence in the house, broken only by the sounds of her children's self-absorbed activities, was deafening. But she didn't shout, didn't confront them, didn't fight back overtly. She was watching, observing their true nature emerge. The second week passed, stretching into the third. Not one of them tried to help her, offered her food, or asked how she was managing to feed herself. Not one of them checked her wallet or offered her any money. And then one morning, she awoke feeling terribly hot and weak, her body aching. She had a fever, a dry, hacking cough, and a pounding headache that made her skull throb. She called out to Kwame, asking him to assist her in getting to the hospital, her voice weak. He replied from his room, without coming to check on her, "Mummy, you know money is really tight now. Nobody has cash. Perhaps just rest and take some paracetamol. You'll be fine." She nodded slowly to herself in the empty room and watched as he simply walked away, unconcerned. Later that day, summoning every ounce of strength, she put on her shoes by herself, walked slowly and shakily down the street, and implored the pharmacist next to her estate to give her medicine for malaria on credit, promising to pay when she could. The same woman who had once generously donated 2 generators to the local health center, who had funded numerous community projects, was now reduced to begging for basic malaria drugs like a stranger, her dignity stripped away. That night, as she lay alone in her large bed, her fingers trembling uncontrollably, her body aching deep within her bones, she said only one thing under her breath, the words heavy with profound disappointment. "God, they failed the test. They failed." It all started quietly, subtly, just a few days after Madame Nala Nalesai had dragged her weakened body to the pharmacy. Trembling and humiliated, to plead for malaria drugs on credit. Her body, resilient from decades of hardship, slowly began to recover its strength. She was still fragile, still bothered by a dry cough in the mornings, but at least she could now manage to sweep the compound or walk across a room without having to hold onto the wall for support. You would think, naturally, that her children would be concerned, that they would notice how pale and drawn her face looked, the visible signs of her illness and struggle. But no. That week, instead of receiving care or even a simple inquiry about her health, she started receiving instructions, dismissive and demanding directives as if she were an employee. "Mummy, please, I really don't like the way the floor is smelling lately," Amma said one morning, sipping a freshly made smoothie, paid for with her mother's remaining funds, and scrolling indifferently through her phone. "Can you please mop it again today, and try and use disinfectant this time? The smell is bothering me." Nala Nalesai just stared at her daughter, the audacity of the demand stunning her into silence. It didn't stop there. The daughter-in-law, Nuru, walked past her in the kitchen, where Nala Nalesai was preparing a simple meal for herself, and deliberately rolled her eyes, letting out an audible sigh of exasperation. "You left plates in the sink since morning. Are we now living like pigs in this house? The hygiene level is terrible." Her voice was deliberately loud, too loud, clearly intended to be heard and to shame. Nala Nalesai turned slowly from the small pot of rice she was monitoring on the stove. "Excuse me, who exactly are you talking to in that tone?" she asked, her voice low. "Oh, please," Nuru retorted with a dismissive wave of her hand, her attitude insolent. "If you want to be living here, staying with us, at least try and be useful. ABI? You expect me to cook for you too? I'm not your housemaid. Oh, you can't just sit around doing nothing." Nala Nalesai was shaking, not from fear, but from a simmering, intense rage that had been building for weeks. She turned to her son, Kwame, who was present in the living room, engrossed in his gaming console. "Kwame, you heard what your wife just said to me, your mother?" Kwame didn't even lift his head from the screen, his focus elsewhere. "Mama Abek," he said, using a casual, dismissive term. "Just leave Am. Nuru has been stressed lately. It's nothing." Then, adding insult to injury, he continued, addressing his mother directly without looking at her. "And Mummy, I am your mother, yes, but you can't be expecting people to be cooking and cleaning for you all the time, now that you don't have staff. You said you don't have money again now, so everybody should pitch in and help." Nala Nalesai looked around the house, her house, the house she had built from the ground up, the Italian marble tiles she had personally handpicked, the magnificent chandelier she had imported from Dubai, the paint colors she had argued with engineers over for 2 painstaking weeks to get just right. Now, in this very house, her children and daughter-in-law were telling her, the owner, that she needed to pitch in and help, implying she wasn't doing enough. She kept quiet, swallowing her pride and fury until that hot Thursday afternoon, the air thick with unspoken tension. Amma barged into the living room with an attitude so entitled and abrasive it felt like it could shake the foundations of the house itself. She was wearing a crop top and shorts, a scarf tied carelessly on her head, clearly preparing for some social media activity. "Mummy, please shift out of the way. I want to use that mirror. I have a video to shoot urgently." Nala Nalesai looked up from the chair where she was quietly folding some old wrappers, a domestic task she now did herself. "Video? What kind of video do you need to shoot right now?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Mummy, please beg. Don't stress me right now. It's just a short-form video. You won't understand, it's complicated." Nala Nalesai kept quiet again, choosing not to engage. Then Amma added, under her breath, but deliberately loud enough for her mother to hear, a comment dripping with disdain. "Some mothers are enjoying soft life right now, traveling, being pampered. Me, I now have to share mirror space with an old woman that has turned our house to face me. I face you, meaning a place of conflict and discomfort." Nala Nalesai snapped. The carefully constructed dam of her patience finally broke. She stood up abruptly, her wrapper falling to the floor unnoticed in her sudden movement. "Everybody come out here now. Kwame, Nuru, All of you, come out into the living room now, she commanded, her voice ringing with unexpected authority. They came out one by one, groggy, unbothered, and slightly annoyed at the interruption. What is it again, Mummy? What's all the shouting? Kwame said, looking impatient. Nala Nalesai stood tall, despite her recent illness, and pointed at each of them in turn, her finger trembling slightly. I am still your mother. I am the only reason you have a roof over your head tonight. This house, this magnificent house you walk around in like you already own it, I built it with my own 2 hands, with my tears and my blood, brick by painstaking brick.
Ama Scofford dismissively.
Nuru rolled her eyes in open disrespect, and Kwame just leaned back, a smug, almost victorious laugh escaping his lips, a sound that cut Nala Nalesai to the core. And Mummy, he said, his tone mocking, the same house that you supposedly built in my name? The same house where the documents clearly state the owner is Kwame Falai. Nala Nalesai froze, her mind reeling, the carefully hidden truth exposed. Yes, he continued, pressing his advantage. You thought we didn't know your plan? Before, you were planning to control us forever, keep us dependent. Well, not anymore.
You're old now.
You're broke. You're a liability to us. Nuru stepped forward, emboldened by Kwame's words. Exactly, she added, her voice sharp and final. We've talked about it as a family, Kwame and I, and Amma agrees. You should move out. You need rest, peace, and quiet. Go and stay in one old people's home somewhere. Let us handle the house. We need our peace here, without the stress. Nala Nalesai stood there, her mouth wide open in disbelief, utterly speechless at the casual cruelty of their words, the speed at which they had decided to discard her. Then Amma, adding her contribution to the final insult, stormed out and returned minutes later dragging a battered, faded suitcase. She entered her mother's room with reckless disregard, flung open the polished mahogany wardrobe doors as if it were a cheap locker, and started packing clothes with the speed and indifference of a frantic tailor in a bustling market. Nala Nalesai followed her slowly, her body trembling. Amma, what are you doing? Stop this. Helping you pack, of course.
Ama replied, not pacing.
Isn't that what you want? You want peace? We want peace. It's mutual. Kwame came in next, picked up the bag his sister was filling, and dragged it roughly towards the living room. Mummy, please leave with your dignity. Don't make this any more embarrassing than it already is for you. Nuru walked ahead, opened the heavy front door wide, and with a final, chillingly casual comment said, Let the breeze touch your body, Ma. Fresh air is good for the elderly. Nala Nalesai didn't say another word. She walked slowly to the door, her legs heavy, picked up her discarded wrapper from the floor, wrapped it around herself, and stepped out onto the polished front porch. The heavy gate closed behind her with a resounding clang, sealing her fate outside. Silence. Minutes later, she checked into a 5-star hotel, the luxurious Golden Baobab Suites, ordered the finest jollof rice and tender goat meat available from room service, lay down on a bed that didn't squeak or sag, felt the soft, clean sheets against her skin, and finally allowed herself to cry, sobbing uncontrollably for 2 full hours straight, releasing weeks of pain and humiliation. It had been a full, agonizing week since Madame Nala Nalesai had been so heartlessly thrown out of her own house, the magnificent mansion she had built, like a common squatter or an unwanted guest. 7 whole, long days since her own daughter, Amma, the child she had nurtured and sacrificed for, had packed her clothes into a faded traveling box as if she were merely evicting a troublesome, overdue tenant. Since Kwame, her firstborn son, the one she had carried for 9 months, endured the pain of childbirth for and breastfed with cracked and bleeding nipples, had grabbed that same pathetic box, walked to the gate, opened it and tossed it into the street like garbage. And all she could do in that devastating moment was stand there, frozen, her half-tied wrapper disheveled and symbolic of her shattered state, her mouth agape in utter disbelief and profound heartbreak. That was the day, the precise moment, she became a stranger to the mansion she had built, to the home that was no longer hers. Now she sat, physically and emotionally drained, in a plush, luxury suite at the Golden Baobab Suites, where the constant hum of the air conditioner was louder, more comforting, than the chaotic noise of her thoughts. The pristine white duvet on the large bed felt like cool, unfamiliar snow against her skin. Her eyes were visibly swollen from crying, a physical manifestation of her pain, but her posture was straight, sharp, and outwardly unshaken, a testament to her inner strength. Her untouched meal of perfectly cooked jollof rice and grilled chicken sat beside her, now cold, just like the pervasive, isolating silence that surrounded her. And still, not a single call from Kwame, not one message from Alma, not even a simple text message asking, "Mummy, are you okay? Where are you?" Instead, she had received cold, official bills from the estate manager for service charges on the house, demanding payment from her, and heard news from her trusted friend, Ms. Zawadi, that her children were now audaciously bragging in public, their voices loud and proud. "We now own the Emerald Isle Residence's house. It's ours." Nala Nalesai laughed, a short, bitter sound devoid of humor. She wiped the last of the tears from her eyes with the back of her hand, picked up her phone, and dialed the number for Advocate Juma. "Good evening." The lawyer's voice came through the line, calm, professional, and polite. "Good evening, Madam Nala Nalesai." She didn't waste time with pleasantries. The moment for delay was long past. "Advocate," she began, her voice firm and resolute, "come to my hotel room tomorrow morning. Bring your files. Bring everything related to my properties and will. I want to rewrite my will, completely and irrevocably." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Are you quite sure, Ma? You sound upset." "I'm not upset, Advocate," she replied quietly, her voice regaining its steely edge. "I'm finally ready to do what needs to be done." By precisely 10 a.m. the next morning, Advocate Juma arrived at the Golden Baobab Suites, punctual and professional, carrying a worn leather briefcase and displaying his usual calm, steady demeanor. He met Nala Nalesai seated by the large floor-to-ceiling window, which offered a panoramic view of the city below. She was impeccably dressed in soft blue silk, a stark contrast to the disheveled wrapper she had worn when leaving her home, and was calmly sipping pineapple juice. Her face was freshly powdered, attempting to mask the signs of her distress, but you could still see the slight puffiness and shadows beneath her eyes. She didn't offer him a seat immediately. She simply turned her head and spoke, her voice clear and unwavering. "Advocate Juma," she began, looking him directly in the eye, "write this down precisely as I instruct. From today onward, Kwame Falai is no longer my next of kin. Remove him completely." The pen poised over the legal pad paused midair in the lawyer's hand, his eyes widening slightly in surprise. "Remove him," she repeated firmly. "Remove Alma too. In fact, remove all of them from the will. Disinherit them entirely. I have given birth to them. I have breastfed them. I have clothed them. I have trained them. I have suffered unimaginable hardship and made countless sacrifices for them, and they repaid me by throwing me out of my own house, the house I built for them." She stood up, her movements slow but deliberate, and walked towards the lawyer, the silk rustling softly. "I want my new next of kin to be the foundation I've been planning for years, the one close to my heart, the Nala Nalesai Women of Strength Foundation. Everything, my shops, my extensive properties, my entire estate, including the house, will go there, dedicated to helping others." Advocate Juma tried to blink away the shock evident in his eyes. "Madam, are you absolutely sure you want to disinherit your children? This is a very significant decision." Nala Nalesai smiled, a sad, knowing smile, but the deep-seated pain didn't leave her eyes. "Advocate," she said softly, leaning slightly on the desk, "let me tell you something I have learned. The poor people I helped in the market, the strangers I showed kindness to, treated me with more respect and loyalty than my own children ever did. From today, my sweat, my hard work, my legacy, will serve those who truly need it, those who will never call me a liability or cast me aside." And with that, she picked up the pen offered to her, her hand steady, and signed the document, finalizing the rewriting of her will. The pen didn't shake even once. 1 week later, the quiet, exclusive community of Emerald Isle residences had never witnessed such a significant convoy on a sleepy Wednesday morning. Nala Nalesai didn't return to her mansion alone. She arrived in a sleek, black premium SUV, the vehicle imposing and purposeful, flanked by a second, identical vehicle. Inside that second vehicle was Advocate Juma, dressed formally in a sharp black suit and holding the crucial document, her new will, accompanied by 2 uniformed police officers armed with a valid court order authorizing their presence and action. As they parked in front of the familiar mansion gate, Kwame stepped out onto the porch, dressed casually in boxers and rubber slippers, holding a toothbrush in his hand, clearly just starting his day. He froze mid-motion, the toothbrush dropping from his grasp. Alma came rushing downstairs in her wig cap and a short wrapper, still scrolling indifferently on her phone. Her eyes widening in shock as she saw the vehicles and the police. Nala Nalesai stepped out of the black SUV like royalty, every inch a woman of power and authority. Her custom-made lace gown was a rich, deep wine red, her elaborate head tie packed high and regal, and her eyes held a cold, unyielding resolve. Nobody said a word in the tense silence until Advocate Juma stepped forward, produced the official envelope, and in a clear, authoritative voice declared, "Kwame Falai and Alma Falai, you are both hereby served with a 7-day quit notice. This property, located at Emerald Isle Residences, according to valid legal documents presented to the authorities, has been reclaimed by the rightful owner, Madam Nala Nalesai." Alma screamed, a high-pitched, desperate sound. "Mummy, Mummy, please. We didn't mean to. It was a mistake." Nala Nalesai raised one hand, cutting her off. "Keep your sorry," she said, her voice devoid of warmth or forgiveness. She turned to Kwame, her gaze piercing. "You said I should just die, didn't you? That you were just waiting for me to go so you could inherit everything effortlessly?" She opened her small, elegant handbag, brought out 2 sealed envelopes, crisp and formal. "Here," she said, offering them the envelopes, 20 million naira for each of you. That is all you will receive. Now go. Go and build your own empire if you can. But as for this house, my name, my legacy, you will never touch it again." Kwame's knees buckled, and he fell to the ground in a heap. Alma quickly followed, kneeling beside him. They cried, they begged, they pleaded, their previous arrogance completely gone, replaced by desperation. Nala Nalesai didn't flinch, her face a mask of calm resolve. "I gave birth to you," she stated, her voice final. "But I will not be buried by you. Your debt to me cannot be repaid with tears." Then she looked at the waiting police officers. "Escort them out of the compound." As her children were led out, their heads low in shame, Alma still sobbing uncontrollably, and Kwame whispering desperate pleas of "Mummy, please," Nala Nalesai stepped back into her mansion slowly, deliberately. The polished marble floor felt cold under her feet. The magnificent chandelier still glittered overhead. The scent of betrayal, however, still lingered in the air. She closed the heavy door gently behind her, turned the key, locking herself inside, and said to no one in particular, the words an echo in the grand space, "You wanted me gone from your lives. Now live without me. Truly live without me." 2 weeks after Madam Nala Nalesai had decisively evicted her children from the mansion, ensuring they understood the consequences of their actions, the city certainly hadn't heard the last of the dramatic events. Kwame and Alma, attempting to maintain some semblance of false pride despite their humiliation, packed their meager bags and defiantly rejected the 20 million naira their mother had offered each of them, storming out of the gate as if they had a definitive, alternative plan for their future. The son, Kwame, with his wife Nuru and their children in tow, had nowhere else to go immediately and went to squat temporarily with a friend, the living conditions a harsh contrast to the luxury they were used to. Alma, similarly adrift, managed to find space with an old university classmate who made her feel unwelcome with a judgmental side-eye every time she dared to open the fridge. But despite the immediate discomfort, they were determined to prove their mother wrong, to show her they didn't need her or her money. Kwame, ever the dreamer, quickly launched a new tire importation business, grandly calling it Cakeneck Tires, using hastily borrowed capital from one of his old acquaintances from his failed crypto venture. Amma, on the other hand, dusted off her dormant social media account, rebranded herself, and announced the launch of Amma Luxe, a new online boutique promising high-end fashion. Tragically, both businesses were dead on arrival, collapsing before they even had a chance to truly start. Kwame, lacking practical knowledge, imported the wrong size of tires for the local market. His goods got stuck indefinitely at the port, and the customs officer he naively tried to bribe ended up simply swindling him out of the remaining borrowed money. Alma spent far more time posing for pictures with the inventory than she did fulfilling actual orders. Customers began publicly shaming her online for severe delays in shipping, sending fake or substandard products, and completely disappearing after collecting deposits. In less than 2 months, the once arrogant children of Mama Gold and Plenty were both utterly broke, deeply frustrated, and perpetually hungry. The same children who used to say dismissively, "We're grown now, Mummy can't control us anymore," were now whispering between themselves, their pride shattered. Maybe we should just go back and beg. And beg they eventually did. They returned to the imposing gates of Emerald Isle Residences one Saturday morning, standing outside like strangers looking in, their appearance a stark contrast to their former selves. They wore clothes that had lost their luster, visibly worn and faded, and their eyes were sunken and tired, heavy with the weight of reality and hardship. "Gatekeeper, please tell Mummy that Kwame and Amma are here," Amma said, her voice trembling with nervousness and desperation. The gatekeeper, loyal to Madame Nala Nalesai, didn't even flinch or show any recognition. He simply stepped back inside the gatehouse and returned moments later with a terse, unambiguous message. "Madam says I should throw you out. She is not receiving visitors." They stood there, stunned and humiliated. Kwame frantically tried calling her phone. Her line was switched off, unresponsive. Amma sent lengthy, tearful apology texts. There was no reply. They tried again the next day, standing outside the gate for hours, and the next day, and the next week, nothing. So they switched strategy, deciding to bring in outside pressure. They first brought in their family pastor, hoping for spiritual intervention, then their former Sunday school teacher, a respected elder. Next came their mother's cousin from their ancestral village, a woman of considerable influence. Community leaders from the Kent province arrived at the gate with high-tide wrappers and Bible verses on their lips, ready to intercede. "Mama Nala Nalesai, forgive them. Blood is blood. They are your children." Even the estate chairman's wife came once, a lady of high social standing, sipping her malt slowly in the living room as she pleaded on their behalf, trying to reason with Nala Nalesai. It took 3 long, agonizing months, 3 full months of begging, pleading, and various intermediaries attempting to intervene, until one quiet Tuesday evening, Nala Nalesai finally told the gatekeeper, her voice calm, "Let them in. I will see them." They entered quietly, humbled by their experiences, walking slowly into the grand parlor where they had once demanded service. They knelt before her, their heads bowed low. Amma wept like rain, the tears streaming down her face. Kwame wiped tears from his eyes with his shirt sleeve, his usual swagger completely gone. "Mummy, we have suffered," Kwame whispered, his voice broken. "Mummy, we have learned," Amma added, her voice shaky. Please forgive us. We understand now." Nala Nalesai said nothing for a long time, allowing the weight of their confession and her own pain to fill the silence. Then, her gaze steady, she asked, "Have you truly learned what it means to suffer? What it means to work with your own hands, to build something from nothing?" They nodded quickly, their heads still bowed. "Good," she said, her voice softer now but firm. "Because my forgiveness is freely given. I forgive you as a mother, but my inheritance, it's gone." They looked up simultaneously, confused and startled by her words. "I've given everything away," she said plainly, without emotion, "to charity. Every single thing I built. This house is now owned by a foundation dedicated to helping women. My shops are leased to an orphanage. You threw me out. You deemed me a liability. So now the people who have never had mothers, the people who truly need help, will enjoy what I built, what was meant for you. Mummy, Amma gasped, the tears stopping abruptly, replaced by shock. Mama, please. Kwame started, his voice filled with dismay. She raised her hand again, silencing them. I've forgiven you, she repeated, but I want you to learn to stand on your own. Stand without me. Stand without what I built. Go out there and build your own legacy. Let your children respect you for what you created, not what you simply collected or inherited. They cried again. They begged and pleaded for her to reconsider. But this time, there was a finality in her voice, a clear indication that there was no turning back. The prodigal children had returned, their lesson learned through hardship, and though the doors of their mother's house were open to them for that moment, the inheritance was irrevocably gone, redirected to serve a greater purpose. From that day forward, Kwame and Amma, truly humbled and transformed by their experiences, worked harder than they ever had in their lives, striving to build something of their own. And Nala Nalesai? She smiled quietly from her balcony in the evenings, sipping zobo, a local drink, in the cooling breeze, watching the sun set over the city she had conquered. Let them grow, she whispered softly to herself. Let them finally become someone. Finally, she handed them the same 20 million naira each, the substantial sums they had previously rejected in their arrogance. Use it wisely this time, she told them one evening, calling them to the house for a brief, formal meeting. This is your seed money. Now go and grow it yourselves. Turn it into something meaningful. And they wept again, but this time, the tears were different. They were tears of acceptance, of remorse, and perhaps, finally, of peace. This was now their reality, the consequence of their choices, and they had no choice but to accept it wholeheartedly and begin the difficult journey of building their own futures. Thank you for taking the time to watch this story. What do you think of this powerful narrative? Do you believe Madame Nala Nalesai went too far in her elaborate test and her ultimate decision? Let me know your thoughtful perspectives in the comments section below. Until I have the pleasure of bringing another intriguing story your way, take care.